It really is kind of difficult to follow youth when they put on such a great show. But I want to start with a little bit of a story. I had a black kitten when I first started into the ministry, and my little black kitten was making a really weird sound. Amos was only a little over 3 months old, and his brother had recently died. So you can imagine that my senses would be on the alert for anything that might be happening with him. So I went to find the source of this crying, growling sound I heard. And in the hallway, there was this little black fuzzball. His back was arched, his tail was up, his hair was standing on end, and his eyes were riveted on a shoelace. I must have dropped it earlier on my way in from upstairs to downstairs, but Amos was tentatively batting at what he perceived to be a huge threat. For what else could that serpentine thing be but a snake, right? Amos's limited experience thus far would not have ever put him in the vicinity of a snake. He'd never been outside, but he had this deep-rooted instinct in him that told him, big threat, with a capital T. Have you ever had that kind of reaction to something? Maybe it was a snake or a spider. I have a friend who goes perfectly still whenever he sees a spider. Well, that's your animal brain at work. It's that ancestral knowledge that we have. It's pointing out a potential threat and warning you to get the heck out of Dodge. I never knew my mom, in all the years of my life, was afraid of spiders. She told me that a few years before she died. She passed away 8 years ago. And I never knew that she was afraid of spiders. And she said, well, I didn't want you or your siblings to be afraid of spiders. I didn't want you to be, have my fear. That's my fear. Well, I have to say, there's nothing like a bunch of legs crawling on you to set you up for life, so I'm guessing her brother probably threw a spider at her when she was a kid. Well, the point I'm trying to make is that we are all built to have an innate caution of danger. There are archaic images that are in our brains, such as spiders or snakes, and they make us innately fearful and cautious of them. For me, it's millipedes. Oh God, my stomach just goes, oh, whenever I think about a millipede. They're terrible. I mean, they do good things, but oh God, all those legs. But we have to be taught instead to be afraid. We have to be taught to dislike. We even have to be taught to hate human beings. Human beings that look different or sound different from each of us. And thinking about this is very timely, as today there is a big white supremacist gathering down in Virginia on the anniversary of last year's gathering where many people were injured and died. Some of that prejudice was active for Zacchaeus. Even though we kind of jokingly approached it, he was called names. And he was in a tough line of work, it's true, collecting taxes for the Roman government. And since everybody knew the mighty power of the Romans, they resented anyone who represented the Romans, especially other Jews who worked for them. And then you add to that the corruptibility of most tax collectors, as Ramsey said in our text. Zacchaeus was pretty rich. What's one more coin in my pocket when the whole bag's going to Rome? Maybe that's what he was always thinking. And then people's views measured him from mild distrust to outright hate of tax collectors. So here we have poor Zacchaeus, hated by most everyone. He was categorized by others. No one looked beyond his vocation to the person that he was. Do you ever remember someone treating you that way? Looking at you differently because of what you did for a job or how you looked? Maybe we don't have that much of that experience. I've heard classic stories of a woman going to the car dealer and not getting the time of day. It's happened to me. But I've also had people completely change when they find out I'm a minister. Some people get really curious. Some people want to just talk religion, and other people find quite usually deft and not impolite ways of just finding another way to find another conversation with other people. But what if you look different? Very different. After World War II, there was a lot of prejudice against the Japanese because of their involvement in the war. Understandable. But instead, that translated into the reviling of all Asians, immediately categorizing them as bad or evil, just because of the color of their skin, really, or the way they looked. African Americans have this every day. I was just listening to a piece on NPR where a man says, once I take off my suit, I still have my skin, and you still see I'm different than maybe you. Asians, Latinos, Middle Easterners, the prevailing American culture wants all of us to revile anyone who looks or sounds different from us. I have to say, anyone who claims Christianity as their faith and believes such a thing, after our text today, really needs to think again. It's not easy to unteach what we've been taught, especially if you've had a bad encounter. My friend Gina and I were at a concert up in Providence, and we got mugged by two black guys. But both of our backgrounds, she was from an Italian family, and of course we know Italians, Irish, there's always people being prejudiced against you too. But both of our backgrounds taught us that it was those two individuals that did the bad deed, not all people that looked like them. So we have to think again because of Zacchaeus' story. In the chapter just before the one we heard, Jesus encountered a rich ruler. You probably remember the story. When he was invited to sell all his goods and follow Jesus, he couldn't do it, and he walked away sad. It's here that Jesus says it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than the rich man to enter heaven. And the crowd responds then, well, who can be saved? And the story of Zacchaeus answers that question profoundly. Jesus looks at Zacchaeus just like he looks at you and me for the person that he is and the person that he can be. Jesus doesn't predefine him. Jesus doesn't predefine us. He doesn't predispose Zacchaeus to the trash heap of humanity. Zacchaeus' encounter with Jesus lifts up that little man and confirms his faith. Our encounters with Jesus should lift us in a similar way. Lift our spirits up as well as lift our views of the world. Conforming our views to Jesus' views make us bigger people, bigger-hearted, stronger-souled people. May you be lifted up today so that others may be lifted by your spirit.